Hello, hello. Welcome back, everyone. It's Baggage Claim here. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, I wanted to just clarify something before I start. First of all, I just want to make sure, can you all hear me okay? I'll let that. Hope I'm counting on it. I'm counting on you guys hearing me okay. But I just wanted to, oh, great. Okay. I just wanted to say that I'm seeing some comments come through as if Just Pearly Thingz is going to join this broadcast. She's not. We are not collaborating. Sorry if any of my description and promotion for this stream sounded like that. That was not the goal of this stream. So the reason I wanted to talk about Just Pearly Thingz, I wanted more so just comment on things that she says out on YouTube. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to talk about that. We're going to try to keep the stream in under an hour because at 1 o'clock California time is going to be Friday Night Tights, and I know a lot of people who enjoy my channel also enjoy Nerdrotic's work, so I would hate to keep you guys from that. So we're going to talk about Just Pearly Thingz. I'm going to show you guys some clips today and talk about some of the things that she said and why I have criticisms for her, and then we're also going to talk about the video that I posted earlier this week that was called What the Hell is Going On? And I just wanted to talk about sort of what has been happening behind the scenes, what kind of comments have been coming through in case you guys are curious. So let's get started. I'm seeing, by the way, a question pop up, opinion on Ron DeSantis. I'm probably not the best person to ask about that. I'm not terribly political. I'm very interested in politics, and traditionally have been so. But the state of American politics over the last, I would say, 6-7 years has been pretty depressing. So I tend to stay away from it. But I think Ron DeSantis seems like a very capable leader and has done great work when it comes to Florida. So from that perspective, I don't really have any criticisms for him. How would he fare as the president of the United States? I'm undecided on that. Okay, so let's talk about Just Pearly Thingz. So if you are not familiar with who she is a YouTuber slash TikToker, and she's a commentator. She describes herself as a dating commentator, and she has a lot of people on her show where she talks to people, either just people recruited off the streets, which she lives in London. Even though she's American, she lives in London, and she recruits people off the streets and has different people hash out ideas relating to dating issues. So it'll be questions like, should a woman have an OnlyFans? Should a woman have an Instagram if she has a long-term boyfriend? How does having an OnlyFans impact long-term happiness? How does having a really high body count, so if you've slept with a lot of men as a woman, how does that impact your ability to have a long-term relationship? So those are the types of questions that she asks on her channel, and she also goes on a lot of other people's shows. So she's part of what I would say is the manosphere. She is, she's along the lines of people like Andrew Tate's brother, and the Whatever podcast. If you guys have heard of that, that's a very popular podcast where it's, again, a similar format where these two guys who host the podcast invite different people on to hash out these similar questions and ideas, and she pops up on those from time to time. So now, but why does this really? Yeah, and she's part of Fresh and Fit. Someone just said Fresh and Fit. I'm not very familiar with who Fresh and Fit is, but I've heard her mention him. Sorry, my nose is itchy. So why am I talking about this? Because I am not part of the manosphere. In fact, I don't agree with a lot of the ideas, and we can get into that if we have time today. I can talk about my overarching criticisms of the manosphere. But why would I talk about that? I would not even have paid attention to this, except that Triggernometry, a podcast that I really love, I watched that a lot. They invited Just Pearly Thingz to come and speak. This was a couple months ago, I would say 2 months ago, and it just really surprised me. And so I have some clips to show you guys, and I know in the description I mentioned that I would talk about Just Pearly Thingz and her appearance on H3's podcast. And I don't have clips from that because honestly, Ethan Klein makes me very angry, unreasonably angry. I don't really care for him. And the whole purpose of him having her on, where she was hoping that it would be good faith, and Ethan, just repeatedly attempts to dunk on her, and and that's what Ethan does. Like, I don't think anyone should expect to go on there if they don't agree with everything Ethan believes. Nobody should go on there thinking that it will be a good faith interview. It's really Ethan's attempt at proving that he is so much smarter than people that he doesn't agree with. And that's not what a podcast should be about. A podcast should be about having an honest conversation, open conversation, challenging each other, be willing to change your mind, and really give an opportunity for the other person to speak and expand on ideas. Now, that's what the Triggernometry guys do really well. But in this interview, you can see why they're gonna really struggle with this when it comes to Just Pearly Thingz. Now, I want to bring up, before I actually show you guys the clip, I want to bring up some things that she says, in case you're curious why I have criticisms for her. One of the things she says is women shouldn't vote. So that's interesting. Yeah, and we'll talk about why. I'm actually going to let her explain why and see what you guys think. Second, and this is something she brought up on the H3 podcast, was divorce should be illegal. So there's that one. Ethan took quite an issue with that statement. Women start to lose value on the sexual market after they turn 22, which is also very interesting. Marriage shouldn't be about being equals. So, and in case you're wondering, again, I forget sometimes because I'm so wrapped up in this, because I have for the last couple weeks been just like watching a lot of her videos. In case you're wondering, like, it's not like she thinks like women are superior. The whole point is, her whole argument is rooted in masculine superiority. And people call her a pick-me girl, which I hate. Like, I really hate that term, but it's probably because I have a chip on my shoulder because I get called a pick-me girl a lot. People say, she has internalized misogyny and all of that. Those are not my criticisms for her. I think she believes things, or claims to believe things, because I don't think she actually realistically, and we'll talk about this later, but I don't think she realistically actually believes these things. But she doesn't understand. She doesn't know how to properly defend them. She doesn't know, she doesn't understand it on a deeper level. So let's start with one of the clips, and we'll go from there. So if you'll just bear with me.
Things that you talk to people on the show about?
Like, one thing is that men shouldn't sleep with so many women. And they'll say, like, men are responsible for all the whores, But I really think it's on the whores for being whores. No, I'm serious. It's like, well, they'll be like, well, if the men weren't sleeping around, but it's like, okay, what % of men can sleep around?
Right.
Yeah. 1 out of 3 men are sexless. So by this logic, like, it's more on the women than the men. But it's like, then they put it on the small percentage of men that are sleeping around.
Mm.
So this gives you guys a little taste of how she tends to communicate. And as I keep going, this is obviously an earlier part of the interview, but as I keep going down the clips, you're going to see just how uncomfortable KK and I've forgotten the other host's name of Triggernometry. So, okay, I completely blanked. you're going to see just how uncomfortable the two of them are going to get. And I swear to God, you can like almost see the regret on their faces. But she's very simplistic in her approach, right? She's very much about like, oh, women are whores. And, you know, if your argument comes down to name calling, it's Francis. Thank you so much. Francis Foster. I'm so sorry. Constant Kissin and Francis Foster. Okay. If you have to come down to, you know, calling women whores as part of an opportunity to try to change their behavior and say, listen, you should not be sleeping around. Now, if I share my opinion on this, I am someone who believes that sleeping around is not mentally healthy for women nor for men. I think we've become very much oriented towards a hookup culture, and a person that is actually a great creator and commentator on this is this man named Rob Henderson. If you're ever curious to kind of understand the true pitfalls of hookup culture, then he's the person to look at. He's the person to listen to, because he's a statistician, and he looks at the data and to try to understand what exactly is going on in our culture. He doesn't make these wide sweeping comments about it, right? Instead, he gets into the nuance of it, and he has proper empathy and class in the way that he addresses these points, that women do suffer if they are buying into hookup culture and promiscuous behavior. They do end up suffering because as much as feminism has pushed women towards promiscuous culture, it doesn't benefit women. It actually hurts women. We're not built like that. The reason that promiscuity has been pushed so much has been a downstream effect of both feminism and the advent of the birth control pill, because our biology in itself is very limiting to us being promiscuous, right? If you take out all forms of birth control and we are very promiscuous, what we're going to find is that we're going to suffer some really intense ramifications, right? Like unwanted children, unwanted pregnancies. But when you add birth control, the belief is now that you stop being a woman, you become a man, a man, basically. So why shouldn't you be able to sleep around like a man? And that's what she says. You know, Pearl's whole idea is like, oh, that makes you a whore. If you have a high body count, you're a whore. But she's also taking it so far. But she's like, you should be a virgin if you on your you know, when you get married, and that's the only way to be happy in a relationship. Only way to be happy in a marriage is if you are a virgin on your wedding night. So it's a very antiquated idea. It's a very bombastic idea, especially in like when it comes to modern relationships. So we'll move on. I won't hover too much about this. Let's go on.
I can't walk home alone at life. Night, my life is.
Where the hell did it go?
Can't walk home alone at life. Night, my life is.
Once again, something's acting up. Let me do it again.
Just like she was a whale, you know what I mean? And I don't really understand it. Men are more likely to be victims of a violent crime. And then she's like, well.
Okay, all the sound is completely off. So I'm sorry about that, guys. But just bear with me for 1 second. I'm just going to pull up the video and show you because I know exactly where it is. This is disappointing. The clipping did not work. Okay. So now I can show you my screen. I'm so sorry, guys. I hate that this didn't work. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this. Perfect, you can. Okay, great. All right, here we go.
They're like super under.
Yeah, I don't see that.
Yeah.
I don't see that.
No,
Who
they're
says
like super-
Americans don't get irony?
I got whale attacked for one of these opinions because this girl, I was doing street interviews, and this girl was like, I can't walk home alone in life. My life is so hard. And I was just like, she was a whale, you know what I mean? And I only say
You mean
this-
she was overweight?
very fat, yeah.
Yeah.
And so what she did was she was like, and I was like, well, why don't you just not live in a big city? Why don't you just live somewhere safer? Why don't you just not walk home alone at night in a big city? Men are more likely to be victims of a violent crime. And then she's like, well, and then she attacks me. She tries to, she's like, I'll have you, you slag. I didn't know what a slag meant. Okay, I didn't even know what a slag was, but she was like, I'll have you, you slag. I'll have you. And I was like, have me? Like what? and so then she like knocks the mic out of my hand. My friend had to like pull her away. And then I got it taken off of my YouTube for private.
Okay, I really hope the sound came through on that. Oh yeah, okay, great. Oh, thank God. I was like on the other tab and I'm like, what if I'm just staring into nothing and you guys can't hear anything? You guys can tell I'm so new to streaming. Anyway, okay, she's describing how on the street during one of her interviews, she got attacked, she got whale attacked. And it's just, again, it's so ridiculous, first of all, to be just like laughing that someone is, you know, someone's fat and to call them names. It's just so immature. It's unbelievable. But, you know, I won't hover over that too much. But this is like part of my problem. And you can see KK and Francis are just so uncomfortable. Like what? Like there is so much regret. Like, why did we bring this girl on? Like, is this really the kind of stuff that she's going to talk about? Now, the next clip I'm going to show you is about one of her opinions that I mentioned earlier. This is about voting. So now I'm going to actually give her the opportunity to explain why she thinks women shouldn't vote, and we'll talk about it after.
I recently decided that women shouldn't vote.
You decided women shouldn't vote?
Yeah, that's a new opinion.
Why's that?
Okay.
I'll take one for the team. Yeah.
Okay. Why shouldn't women vote?
Because we're chemically different every single day.
Right.
And like, okay, we make 70.
Well, hold
okay.
on. Does that mean you shouldn't be on YouTube then? Because you're chemically different. Your opinions could be bullshit. Because
They could be, yeah. Should I be banned off of YouTube?
That's
What does that have to do with voting? It's like a false equivalency.
Okay.
So to me, it's like, okay, I feel like if shit goes south, who's going to war? Okay, you know,
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Man.
let me
Yeah, fair.
let me start
And
from the
lesbians.
beginning. Let me start. Actually, I wanna start from
Mate,
how
you
I
don't
got.
want to be jumping on this
Okay.
fucking train. Believe
No.
me.
I want to start with how I got this opinion.
Okay.
I
Cool,
want to
let's
start.
do
Let
it.
me. Okay, because I heard from a guy named Rollo Tomasi, genius, right? Very
Yeah.
smart.
He's a pickup artist, isn't he?
No.
Is he not?
See, a lot of people say this. It sounds crazy.
It does a little bit.
Yeah, and when
Well,
I
quite a
first
lot,
heard it,
actually.
I thought it was crazy. Okay.
Okay.
But what I heard was that women didn't want to vote. So when I was like,
What do you mean women didn't want to vote?
Like the first
They
wave,
threw themselves under fucking carriages to vote.
some did,
Yeah.
right? But was that women at large?
I don't know.
No, it
Okay.
wasn't. The majority of women back then, we always talk about the suffragettes, but there was also the anti-suffragettes.
Yeah.
And that was the majority of women, when asked if they wanted to vote, said no. In the US. I don't know what it was like here.
Okay.
You know, this is US. And I was like, why did women not want to vote? Now, so I read some of their writings from back then, okay? And they basically said this is the beginning of the breakdown of the family. Because back then, when you got married, you became one and you trusted your husband to make that decision, okay? Now, that was one argument. And I was like, okay, well, but society's a little different today. Argument number 2. Back then, they had to be drafted. So any woman that wanted to vote had to go to war because you're voting, in the US anyway, for your commander-in-chief. Because if they go to war, who's going to have to deal with the consequence? And that's where we're at, is because if shit goes south and we go to war, the men are the one that are going to have to deal with the consequences. So yeah, I felt like if we want to vote, we should be equally, because women want equality, equally drafted, just like the men. And now you're thinking we don't have the draft anymore, right? That's probably your thought. However, we have selective service in the US, meaning that if a man, and if there's a crisis, right, and we do go to war, the men have to be like they then can be taken to, I'm butchering it a little bit. Does that make sense? But, and if they don't do this, they're fined $100,000. Is that equal? Is that fair? Where we have the same rights, but we don't have the same responsibilities if shit goes south? I don't think that's fair. So I thought about it. Would I want to be in selective service if I had to pick? My answer is no. No, I will give up the right to vote to not have to do that. And I think that would be fair. I think feminists, they want equality, but they don't want the responsibility that comes with it. That's my opinion.
Okay. Now,
just look at their faces. Like they have no idea where to go with this. And okay, this was so different with Ethan Klein, because Ethan, like from the H3 podcast, because he was totally down. He was totally down to argue with her. And he, you know, it became, if you guys watch that podcast, it basically became a fight to the death of like who could pull up the stats and prove the other person wrong. And it was a useless conversation, really. But these guys are like, we have no idea how to really even talk to her about this. And the thing is, someone just said like, oh, because she made good points. Okay, so maybe some of you believe like, okay, that's a fair point, that there should be equality when it comes to the draft. But that perspective, again, tends to look at everything as like, well, if this is this, then this is this. Like everything creating this like equivalence of like, if you vote, then everything should be the same. But the question is like, are there different types of responsibilities that men have versus what women have? Like there is responsibility that men have to society and responsibility that women have to society. So just because women aren't part of the draft doesn't mean that women don't have other responsibilities to society. And the whole reason for promoting something like the vote for women is that the crucial work that women do for society is a very quiet work. It's the work of raising children. It's the work of keeping households together. And that's why being a homemaker, being a housewife is such a difficult job, because you're not paid for it. You're not employee of the month. You're not told like, oh, you're incredible. There's like, I think there are instances where people do get told that, but typically speaking, like coming from a culture, like an Indian culture that's so traditional about this, right? My grandmother, watching my grandmother working until she was, well into her 70s, and she was on her feet all day. And culturally, it was just expected of her to be taking care of the whole family. And all the families, like there were joint families, right? It's not just yours. It's like both her sons were living with her, as well as their wives and as well as their children. That's how family structures work. It's not a nuclear family structure. It's a joint family structure. And she's the one who's taking care of the family. She's working night and day. And there wasn't an instance of anyone saying thank you. And like, what you do is really crucial and pivotal and necessary. Instead, everybody kind of took it for granted. And that's the hard part about being a woman and being at home, is that your work can go ignored. It can go unnoticed by people. But that's an important responsibility that women have. And I'm not saying that's the only responsibility, but it's like, I would never argue that women shouldn't go out and work and only take care of children. I completely disagree with that. So this comparison that the only way that you can earn the right to vote, or one of the crucial ways to earn the right to vote, is by signing up for the draft, I don't agree with that. One of the important responsibilities that we have put on men, that traditionally always we put on men, is the protection of the city walls. That's an important aspect of society is that, and we should be grateful for that, right? We should be grateful to what men do that also goes unnoticed. You know, there are aspects of sacrifice that men make every day that we should always pay attention to. We should always take note of. And I agree with her on making those points, right? Where I think we're at a time that we're so busy elevating females, but I do think it's like we're elevating women and pushing them towards masculinity. I don't agree with that. But I think we're so caught up with always like female, you know, supremacy, that we've stopped paying attention to every day what men do quietly, silently, that we should be paying attention to. We should be appreciating. So that's why I disagree with her, because I do feel like she takes it too far. She says, you know, she takes things to extremes, and that's where I have a problem. So let's keep going to the next section. What's the next section? Okay, actually, let me set some context before we talk about this one. You can see what the headline, the title of this podcast is, that right before she actually came on to this podcast, she had released an episode where she had Nick Fuentes on her channel. And Nick is, if you guys are not familiar, he's not a reasonable person. He has like some pretty unreasonable opinions. Like he's a Holocaust denier. He's a self-avowed racist. He doesn't like race mixing. So a lot of people have deplatformed him for that reason and feel like he shouldn't have any opportunity to be platformed because of how pernicious his opinions are. Now, I disagree with that idea. I don't agree with anything that he says, but I think that if there are ideas that are held that are really pernicious for society, they should be platformed and discussed and rebutted. Because if what you do is just silence someone by deplatforming them, by, you know, he's on the no-fly list. He's like really ostracized for his beliefs. I think what it does is actually gives it more gravitas. I think it makes people who want to believe what he says, it gives them more of a reason to go and cling to him and use him as a kind of like, look at him as a martyr. Like, look how society is rejecting his ideas because they're so potent. That's why nobody wants to listen to him. I think the best way to defeat an idea is not to silence it, but to discuss it further with, you know, in a way that's useful, in a way that's constructive. Right. And Triggernometry guys do not agree with me on that. They're going to tell you what they think, but they think that he should never be platformed. So you're going to hear that. So here we go. 5112.
And you actually coming on the show, you had a guy called Nick Fuentes.
Oh yeah, Nick.
Yeah. And then you did an interview with this guy. Like, this is not a guy we would ever have on because he's a racist, Holocaust denying piece of shit as far as I'm concerned. But you had him on, and then you took that interview down and apologized. So what happened with that whole thing?
Oh, I can't talk too much. There's like legal things going on.
There's legal things going on.
Yeah, there's not with Nick, but just but there's I have a video coming out about that whole thing. So you guys have to wait for the video. Well, but I will say I did not find Nick to be racist. My staff actually did not find him to be racist.
Wait, he was talking to an Italian girl next to you and saying that she shouldn't have a black boyfriend or something along those lines.
He doesn't believe in. See, I don't really want to go into like the race mixing stuff too much.
No, but you just said he wasn't being racist, and I watched him be racist on your show.
Well, I mean, to me, he says the same things that like there's a lot of people that think like that. But
it doesn't make it less racist just because other people think it.
You could say that, but to me, it's like, how do I put it? His argument is more about culture. It's easier if you date someone in your culture. You'd have to watch the full thing, but was like, being a bit like combative to him. And to me, he was just like kidding. But yeah,
He did say, I am a bit racist, even in that. And in fact, in your apology, you said that he said racist things.
Well, there's a
So this clip is a little long, so I'm going to pause here because I hope you guys don't mind me showing a bit of a longish clip. It gives the full context of what's going on, but you can tell just how uncomfortable she's getting with this line of questioning. Like, you saw her energy at the beginning. She was very excited. She was very, animated. And this is something I've noticed with Pearl, is that the more she gets challenged, the more she actually really goes into her shell. She starts to get very, very quiet, which I don't blame her. I would probably do the same. Like, I think it's very easy to tell, even with me, that if I'm struggling with something, you can see the difference in my demeanor. I'll get quieter. I'll get, you can see almost the sadness. So we can see that that's what's happening here. And here, I think here is something that Pearl is discovering from casting out of the manosphere, is that it's very dangerous outside of that, right? In the manosphere, what typically happens is that it's either she's on her own show, in which case she's the one in control and she's bringing on guests off the street, right? These are everyday people who are not well versed on the facts, on studies, on actual numbers relating to whatever they're arguing. So she can dominate in those situations, because she can say, well, actually this, X, Y, and Z is the number of, of divorces that happen, so she can do that, and she can dominate because she does actually have a powerful voice. Like, even though it sounds like she sounds pretty meek here, but she actually has a powerful voice. And then on these other podcasts, like the Whatever podcast, which is hosted by these two men, she has the support of these two men who are going to back her up on everything she says. And again, it's in those instances, she's arguing, she's debating with people who are not well informed themselves. So, and when people are not well informed, you can see them pretty quickly devolve and start to aim pot shots at each other, like personal attacks and things. And she does well in that. And she does well with that. If someone's going to attack her personally, she can actually tackle that really well. I don't know if you guys have seen, examples of that, but I don't have one off the right now. I don't have one ready, but she can handle those situations, and you see it because she calls people whales, she calls people whores. Like, she can shoot back. But when she's challenged on the facts, that's when she starts to fall apart. And that's why she fell apart on the H3 podcast as well, is because her ideas only go so far. They are one-liners that she can toss out, like, actually, I decided, women shouldn't vote anymore, and it's because of the draft, but if you force her to think more deeply about that, she starts to fall apart. And that's what's happening here, where, like, I agree with her. You should have the right to platform someone like Nick Fluentes if you want to have a conversation with him. But when she's pushed on it, she really starts to fall apart, because she has not herself thought through her ideas. She hasn't thought through why she believes it. And that's what we're seeing here. So let's keep going, because it gets really interesting.
There's a video coming out about all of that, but you'll see. It's coming out.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking you is because it's kind of like a big deal that you had this guy on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
He is incredibly toxic.
I'm just telling you my personal experience with him. We filmed hours and hours and hours of footage with him. There was that one to me, if you watch the full clip, it puts it in a little bit of context.
Yeah.
But he was really polite. He showed up on time. Like, we just, yeah.
He also,
and honestly, he did a panel and he spoke about his opinions on race mixing, and a lot of people agreed with him.
Okay, but that doesn't change whether it's racist or not, right? But what I'm getting
Do you think it's racist to, like, because I'm curious.
Yeah.
Do you think it's racist, like, if I'm Irish and I say I want to date someone that's Irish? Do you think that's racist?
No, but if I say to you, you're Irish, therefore you shouldn't date a black man, that is racist, yeah.
Okay, so you saw an example there where Constantine has obviously taken a lot of time to think about things. So he can make the distinction between encouraging a personal preference versus a stipulation by someone externally. And that's the difference between like, has someone really thought about their ideas and can then challenge in a nuanced perspective, whereas she can't. And she immediately you see her face shift, like she doesn't know now how to answer it.
If you're Irish, and because when he spoke about it on the show, it was more about culture than race.
But to me, that doesn't really work as an argument, Paul. So I'll give you an example. I'm half Latin American. I take after my dad's Irish side. If I date a Jamaican woman, Jamaica and Venezuela have a very similar culture. We're culturally very similar. We have the same food, the same religion, whatever else. So to me, that argument doesn't work. Do you see what I'm saying?
Wait, Venezuela and what?
And Jamaica. So Venezuela's at the top of South America, and Jamaica is all Trinidad, which is literally, you see it over the water.
Yeah, well, it's just, when he was talking about how he wanted to date an Italian woman, like versus, like he even said he wouldn't want to date a British girl, he'd want to date an Italian woman. So it was like, how is he a white supremacist?
No, he's allowed to date who he wants,
Yeah.
but him telling your Italian friend she shouldn't be dating a black man, that's the racist part, don't you think?
I'd have to remember what he said in the clip, but maybe, yeah, maybe.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking you, because you do have controversial guests, as we do, and there's nothing wrong with talking to people who are controversial, but Nick Fuentes is a very different kettle of fish, as we say here, right?
Yeah, my opinion is that he was polite overall. He was a good guest.
He was also denying the whole.
I think what would have been interesting here is if Pearl had turned it around and said like, well, why? What makes Nick someone who doesn't deserve to be platformed if your podcast is called Triggernometry, if the whole point is to talk about things that are triggering and get to the bottom of the truth, why would you guys not host someone like that? And that's where, that's one of those things that's really hard to do, that when you're on the receiving end of what people might say is aggressive questioning, right? You can tell these two, Francis is a little more relaxed, but Constantine is definitely a lot more aggressive. And you can get so caught up in your insecurity that you're on the back foot. And I think this happens more and more typically more to women. Like I definitely have this emotion too, where you almost can't think straight. And there's a great analysis video that this channel called Charisma on Command did on Jordan Peterson, because Jordan Peterson really completely blew up when he sat down with that woman from ITV called, of course, I'm not going to remember her name right now, but I think you all know which interview I'm referring to, where she kept saying over and over, so what you're saying is, and then she would misrepresent everything Jordan Peterson was saying. This is from back in 2016. And she was very combative. She was very aggressive. But the whole time you can see that Jordan Peterson is sitting back. He has a very relaxed posture, and that doesn't shift. Like his posture, his expressions, Kathy Newman, there you go. His posture doesn't change from the beginning to the end of the interview. And Charisma on Command does this analysis on like how to stay calm when you're being attacked, when you feel attacked. And it's all in the posture. It's all in how you kind of maintain your sense of space. And you then, instead of addressing your emotion of you feeling attacked, you feeling betrayed, you instead address the ideas being put forward. And that's one of the reasons that he became so popular for that interview, is that watching an academic perform like that under such hostile conditions and see him produce very logical answers that resonate with everybody, that actually end up arguing with a very complex type of criticism, was incredible to see. But obviously Jordan Peterson is Jordan Peterson, and he's able to do something like that. But you can see why she's struggling here, even though she could have called them out for being hypocritical, which, by the way, the comments are full of that. People are were very angry in the comments towards the Triggernometry guys for not seeing their own hypocrisy. All right, let's keep going.
And the Holocaust, from what I remember.
Look, yeah, I'm not with that. Keep me out of that one. I'm not with the race. Like, that's not my thing. But I just think people are allowed to have their opinions. So if he has crazy opinions, let him have his opinions. And I think he should be allowed to talk about it on a podcast.
But isn't it also the duty, Pearl, of the person interviewing them to push back on those opinions when they come up and actually challenge them and investigate them and to basically push back on it?
Yeah, I mean, we could do another show where we push back more. It's not the end all be all.
But surely isn't that the risk? Isn't that?
I wanted to do like one with Dr. Umar, but he didn't want to come. Sad.
Who's Dr. I don't know who that is.
Dr. Umar has like the same opinions as Nick. Like, he doesn't believe in race mixing too. He's just black.
Yeah.
That's like a common, yeah.
Yeah, there are some people who believe that, sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you were talking about the Holocaust with him, he was saying it's like slavery, it got embellished, and you were sort of going, I can see your point. And that's what I found a bit confusing, because then in your apology, you said, well, I wasn't really educated on these things. But it sounds like you're kind of taking that back now.
There's a statement coming out on everything, so you guys just have to wait for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to add additional context here, the point about slavery came up in the H3 podcast, and so, you know, it's obvious that Pearl got into a lot of trouble saying, she made a comment, and she's saying, you know, she was referencing a Thomas Sowell book, that the exaggeration of atrocities can be used to control people, which is something that I actually 100% agree with. So, but she's very uncomfortable because she's obviously gotten a lot of backlash. And one of the hardest things to deal with, to address controversial topics without being 100% clear on the nuance of it, is a very dangerous thing, especially online today, right? This is why I get very nervous. Like, I was very nervous before posting what the hell is going on, because it can be interpreted as if I'm anti-trans, you know, I'm anti, you know, the LGBTQIA community and all of those things. It can be interpreted as that. And people will probably always look to interpret things, no matter how reasonable you're being, you know, will look to interpret that. But the problem with Pearl is that because she's so forthcoming with her opinions, she sort of just throws them out, and then can get easily clipped, and then that circulates around, and then she can get bullied online, you know, canceled, attempts at cancellation, threats, all these things can happen. And you can see that face that she has is her realizing, like, oh my God, this might be another moment that gets clipped against me, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to deal with that. And this is why it's like she steps out of the manosphere, and now she's in trouble. Now, there's one last clip I want to show you guys. It's short. It's under a minute. It's from this. And then I'll take questions as well as talk about what the hell is going on, the fallout from that. We'll talk about that, and we'll wrap up in 17 minutes. Okay. 1:01.
That disagreed with him, so we did do that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm a bit confused about is you did a whole apology, but it sounds like you're
stop
not
asking me about this. Like,
Yeah.
I said,
it kind of matters.
I have a statement coming out about it. So
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave it to your statement.
Yeah.
Listen, we always wrap up the show with the same question we ask all our guests, which is, what's the one thing you think we're not talking about that we really should be?
Men's issues. Yeah, that's my
Do you want to elaborate, or happy to leave it there?
No, I would just say, like, men. I just think men not getting custody of their kids. I think that is an issue that nobody talks about.
Okay, sweet. Well, Pearl, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for sticking with me through those clips. So you could see that after, beyond even what I had shown you, where they're questioning her, they kept going, they kept questioning. And then it got to a point where she said, can you guys stop asking me about this? And you can see why people were angry in the comments, because again, like, it goes against what trigonometry is all about. And you know, someone in the comments, I don't know where I saw it, but someone said like I ended up unsubscribing because of that episode, and I can completely understand why. But this is why I had criticisms for Pearl, is that she says these bombastic things, but she doesn't know how to defend them. And that gave me that hint about why she says these things, because if you look at her success, she's become very successful very quickly. And I think I think in under a year, she had more than 1 million followers. And that's commendable. But one of the ways that people are able to do that is by saying things that are so outlandish, considered so, you know, egregious, that then people almost hate watch it or clip it, and then it just circulates, and then that's how your popularity just keeps compounding. And so, you know, it's popularity, but it's also notoriety. How you get your fame is important. This is the same reason why, you know, people should criticize women for seeking out money and fame through OnlyFans, right? It's like, yeah, it pays the bills. Yeah, you could, you know, some of you could make 6 figures, maybe even more. But how you make your money matters. How you get your fame, how you get your name matters, because is it a game that's repeatable, right? That's always a question, is like, is the strategy that you're using to get paid, to get fame, is it repeatable endlessly? That's how you can tell if something is going to be successful, for example, or like good for you on an emotional level, right? For example, if you give someone the advice that, you know, you're having health troubles, okay, eat good food, sleep properly, and work out, move around, play sports. That's a game that is successful endlessly. No matter how many times you do that, it'll always yield success for you, right? Unless you're like, I don't know. I mean, there are exceptions to everything, but unless you're doing it in some excessive way and it's actually killing you, right? But there are games that work endlessly. Get an education, you know, grow your mind, grow your spirit, right? That'll make you more employable, right? So there are games that work always. But seeking out fame through notoriety, where you're saying things like women shouldn't vote, right? Men should have all the control in a relationship. A woman should not, you know, a woman should not work. That's another thing that she says. So those are, you say that, and then you can't defend it, because it's not even like she lives that life. You know, she says that women lose value after 22, and, you know, they should get married as young as possible, and that's best for relationships. I completely disagree with that. I can address that at a different time. But I mean, if you want to get married young, get married young. But that's not always the answer. But, you know, she herself is 25, 26. She's not even living that, right? So that's where, if you are playing a game that you don't wholly understand, when you start to get questioned, you're going to start falling apart. And I think that's what's happening here. Okay, enough about Pearl. But I hope you enjoyed those clips, because it was really playing on my mind. Just to wrap up here, I'll answer some super chats right before I go, but just to wrap up, I want to talk about the video. What the hell is going on? I told you that I was, you know, really struggling with that video. It was very important to me to release that and get that out. And literally the day before I set it up for release, I contemplated just scrapping the whole thing. I was very nervous. A lot of people had to kind of talk me down. And I was very nervous from 2 different perspectives. One was, you know, what kind of hate would it receive? And the second was, what if I release it and it doesn't do well, right? It's a complete belly flop. You know, that's one of the most disheartening things to go through as a creator. If you put so much time into something like this video, I rewrote it 3 to 4 times. I had spent an entire month working on it in January and scrapped it. Then I started working again in May and released it in June. So, you know, you put a lot of work into that, and then you say, well, like, what if it doesn't do well? It does feel very scary to test that. But of course, it would have been fair. If the video didn't do well, that's the market telling me that the video isn't good enough. So, but I am really, really, really glad that it is faring really well. It's my fastest growing video ever, which is incredible. And I hope that holds. I'm very grateful for that. As for the comments, I will say I am blown away. If you guys are curious, I know that video can feel a little disheartening because you're watching, you're like, oh my God, in like one spot, you're watching all these terrible things going on in society, of us of kind of like the manipulation of facts, the grooming of children, like all this stuff happening. And it can feel disheartening, but what was very heartening was to see how positive the response was in comments. Now, there are a lot of instances of people who didn't agree with me. There were instances of people calling me a transphobe, which, I was expecting that. That's part of it. But what I loved is that a majority of it was people saying like, okay, this is great. Or saying like, thank you for saying this. Or some people saying like, I agree with this part. I don't agree with that part. I think it should be this way. It should be that way, which I'm always appreciative of that because I want this to be a conversation. I'm not going to have all the answers. I'm not going to have all the perspectives. This is an open conversation. And the fact that you guys are so, open to discussion just makes me incredibly happy because that's how it should be. Good ideas are forged through discussion, which is something we were talking about earlier with the trigonometry guys, right? Like you need to talk things out. And that's why saying that you can't talk about this, you can't bring this up is such a pernicious idea because it creates these pockets of private thoughts, private concepts that people don't talk about it in the open. But that doesn't mean they don't feel it. And I think this is one of those situations where, most people feel like what's going on is not good and we need to talk about it. So the series is going to continue. There are going to be a lot of follow-up videos to this. They're going to take me time because every time I want to be thoughtful. I never want to make a video that is flippant because these are important ideas. So that's what I'm going to do. So thank you for always sticking up with me and keeping up with me on these videos and being patient. So I really appreciate you all. You're a wonderful, wonderful audience. Okay. Last thing are some questions. Let's go through them. Okay. We Shenanigans says, why can't a woman be more like a man? From My Fair Lady was only meant to be a rhetorical question, not a mandate. Yes, exactly. I mean, a woman is not a woman. A woman is not a man and shouldn't have to be forced to be a man. And, it's interesting because Max, who's one of the creators that I had a wonderful live stream with yesterday, by the way. I've tweeted about it, so you should definitely check out that live stream. It was a great conversation that we had yesterday. But one of the things we talked about is that in criticizing the patriarchy, which is a very loaded concept, modern Hollywood, modern media has created instances of just pushing women to be men, which is only emboldening the idea of a patriarchy because it's reiterating the idea that it is superior to be masculine versus feminine, when the reality is that neither are superior, but they are different and they are both necessary for a healthy world, for a healthy emotional state and healthy marriage and a healthy world. You need both men and women to work together. Honey Badger Radio and Allison Tiemann have a better grasp of the issues. This is by Scapegoat. I don't know who these people are, so thank you for bringing them up. I will check them out. Thank you. Smegma, I'm not going to say that because that's That's a rude word you have in your name, but your last video was amazing. It's the best one you've done so far. It must have been a ton of work, but it paid off. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I'm sorry I'm not saying your name, but I appreciate you. Thank you so much for the support. And thank you, Nebraska, because for the super sticker. Really appreciate it. Same from LCC. LCC, thank you so much. Glad to see you on another live stream. Ultra says, this is for the what the hell is going on video. Thank you so much. Again, you guys are just so supportive. Thank you. And thank you, Gear PG. Thank you for the super sticker. And last question, Center Negative says, love your work. Please stick with it. You are a tremendous and welcome addition to the fellowship. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining. So I'm going to free you guys up for the live stream that's starting, Nerdrotics Friday Night Tights. I do have exciting news. I'm going to be on Friday Night Tights not next Friday, but the Friday after, where we're going to talk about the new Indiana Jones movie. So I'm very excited for that. I'm literally going to go watch it on Thursday afternoon, matinee, before the stream. So I hope to see you all there. And do check out the live stream with Max that I did on his channel. So again, if you want to find that stream, it's on my Twitter account. So, and my Twitter is BaggageClaim11. Thank you again. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.